Welcome to the Line of Sight podcast presented by Keeler. I'm a new face, so to introduce myself, my name is Jordan Stern. I am very lucky to be part of the Keeler family for the last 3 years. For any new listeners, really what we want to be able to do is allow our listeners and viewers to meet different optometry students and start to really understand what it's like to be an optometry student and really get to learn about everybody as well. So tell us a little bit about, obviously, your name, where you're from, a little bit of a background about yourself.
Sure. Hello to everyone listening for the first time. So my name is Saif Abdulameer. I'm a third-year student at the Michigan College of Optometry. So I'm really excited to share you guys kind of an insight of a student's perspective of optometry, at least optometry school. Now that I'm 3 years into the program, and how intricate and amazing optometry in general is as a profession, and just how vast and large it is. And hopefully some of my stories or some of my experience can relate to you guys or provide some inspiration. So
Totally.
I'm a little bit of a hodgepodge in that I grew up in South Dakota, actually in a small town right outside Sioux Falls, if anyone is aware of that area, and then actually moved to Western Michigan when around middle school, high school age. So I've been around this area for a while. So
we're obviously really pumped to have you here and able to kind of share, like you said, share your story, share some things about yourself, kind of talk us through. Obviously, you moved into the Western Michigan area. From what I know, obviously, you kind of got into the eye care space actually relatively early. So was it something that you kind of already knew that it was kind of a passion that you wanted to go into optometry? Was there maybe an area, I know you've mentioned healthcare was always kind of an interest of yours. Was there maybe another area in healthcare that was really kind of appealing to you before eye care?
I think me, like anyone else, was since a young age always knew I wanted to do something in healthcare, something medical. For me personally, I didn't want to do, engineering or anything math related. I didn't want to do anything with, math or I'm trying to think of more options, but anything financial, absolutely not my thing. So I knew for sure something medical, but the timing of it all, by the time I was in my first year of undergrad, actually was COVID. So for me, it was very, very difficult to kind of establish my footing and figuring out exactly. And I felt like I was kind of pressured as well. When you're at such a young age, you don't really know, you got to make that decision kind of relatively early and quick. And ironically, actually, my biggest inspiration is my brother. He was actually he's 3 years older than me, and he's actually a graduate himself of optometry. He's actually an optometrist practicing right now.
Oh, cool.
He was definitely my first kind of look into optometry, right? Because like you said before, I've looked into medical school, right? I looked into dental, kind of anything around that area, PA, PT. And there's always something that felt maybe like it wasn't for me. No blood for me. I don't want to do anything with the mouth.
Right there with you.
Nothing at all. So I was like, how do I really know if medicine's for me? Do I really want to go to medical school? Do I really want to spend all that time and all that obviously dedication? And I shadowed and I shadowed and I shadowed, and I realized that, what my brother's doing is kind of cool. I was his patient while he was in school, right? Because he was essentially he was a student at optometry school during COVID. I was a measly undergrad trying to find my footing. He was already in school, right? But because of that, right? If you guys remember the heart of COVID, nothing could go down at all. So
of course.
What he was doing on me, and he was checking my eyes, and I was like, this is kind of a cool avenue, and you can instantly see the impact you have on patients. And that's what first got me into it, right? So then I started shadowing more optometrists, right?
Yep.
And I was astounded by how much variety and how much modalities, like different modalities you can go into with optometry, right? You can do disease, you can do pediatrics, you can do vision therapy. I didn't know vision therapy existed. I didn't know that was a thing. And so that's kind of what really, that's when I really kind of hit the accelerator on it. And I was like, I think I'm going to do this. I think I'm going to try it. And, before then you knew it, I was already in school, and I think 3 years later, I was already accepted. So
nice.
Pretty remarkable. Hopefully
that's a cool story. So, again, obviously, I don't know if how much you know about that, but obviously the whole pandemic thing, right? It was new for everybody, especially going directly into undergrad, having to do everything
First
online.
Year.
Yeah. So, kind of take us again, I don't know what all you know from your brother's experience of going through optometry school during the pandemic, right? But, I'm assuming that there was a lot being online, right? And from what you're saying, you kind of acting as his patient, right? He probably had to use or use you as a resource, right, to really be able to practice a lot of these things without being in person and seeing patients.
Exactly. I would say, and I remember this because when this first happened, he was actually luckily a first year in that, I think he was around a first year in that he wasn't in clinic yet.
Yeah.
And he wasn't taking boards, right? So all
Mm-hmm.
people that were taking boards and taking and in clinic and seeing patients, they got severely hit by it. So in a way he was lucky, but at the same time, he was delayed in how he was able to learn, right? And so like you said, everything became lectured online rather than in person. And there's benefits and drawbacks to that, but I really think that human interaction just with your classmates, especially, and I can tell you guys later about my school specifically, but we're a pretty tight-knit community. It's only 30, 37, 38 of us per class. So a huge kind of benefit and pull to my school is the fact that you meet people and you interact with them on a daily basis and you build those connections with your professors, with your teachers. And so when you're looking at a pre-recorded video or a bunch of faces on a Zoom call, I don't think you really get that same thing. So for him especially, I think it was difficult, and for everybody, honestly, to get used to. But luckily, we're beyond that. So
yeah, totally. Well, and it's an interesting perspective or an interesting point that you bring up as well, right? When you think about, your brother obviously being, and it's weird to say, but like lucky that he was almost in his first year during something like that, right? When you think about some of the students that were going through having to, again, really miss that whole human interaction or being able to work with patients and missing out on that. But again, obviously things are in the clear now. And luckily by the time that you got there, that was already eliminated as well. So
yeah. And I'm sure you guys probably, of course, felt the same experience somehow, right? You got affected by how you're able to reach out to these schools. And
totally.
Did you guys turn to online things, or what did you have
I think that, again, but as you mentioned, right? I mean, one of the ways that you and I were able to really kind of connect was, from being in person, right? And being able to connect and find some, common interests that we had. And, that was one of those things where, again, similar to what we were doing, a lot of those presentations and events were going virtual, right? And again, there's just a whole different aspect of trying to, connect with the students on a human level when you're doing everything from a computer like we are now, right? But
yeah. And that's crazy. That's crazy that you mentioned that. I didn't even really think about it, but like I'm thinking within my classmates. But I mean, we had all these industry partners and all these amazing people from different companies like you yourself. When we had that first optical showcase, right? We met. I don't know if you remember. It was as a measly first year, but we met at this optical showcase within probably the first 2 weeks of me starting school in 22. I think it was 23, 22. And I can't imagine, not having, picking out my equipment, right? Getting, in touch with
touch it really,
Keeler, literally touching the equipment and the people themselves. And, that's kind of a big part of why I chose Keeler personally, because I interacted with you especially. I was like, oh man, like they're very dedicated to making sure we have a good experience. And I don't know how students did it at the time. So
totally. Well, and again, even from, when I try and put myself in your shoes as well, right, as the student's perspective too, when you think about a time like that, when you're also, you're spending money on this stuff too, right? And if you're only being able to look at it virtually, I mean, it completely changes the decision making, right? So you're kind of going a little bit more on a whim. So, but yeah, obviously we're past that point. So life is in a good spot now. But so I know actually it's kind of interesting because I think our viewers and our listeners will find it interesting, but you can actually tell us a little bit more about it. But Ferris State pretty well, right?
Yeah. Yep. I went to undergrad there as well. So I did I don't know how many programs are like this across the country. I know there's a couple in, I think, the Pennsylvania area as well, but I did a 3+4 program. So that was kind of not accelerated, but an early admissions program, right? And that's something that Ferris State offers because they know that, the Michigan College of Optometry is a big factor. So if you want to do this and you jump on it early, they kind of offer you a pretty incredible opportunity to skip that 4th year, if that makes sense, and make it your first year of optometry school. So
was there any more like increased workload during those 3 years that you had to kind of finish up or was it really just more so you kind of had an idea of what you wanted to do and that really just kind of streamlined the process for you?
You know what's funny? I don't think it's increased workload because you don't think of it like that. If you have that dedication and that mindset, locked in, you don't really think of it as increased workload. It's more so you tighten your schedule and make sure that you are doing just simply the classes that you need as prerequisites. Essentially, it's essentially like you're more concentrating your undergraduate curriculum, so it's not less of these gen eds and more so of these prerequisites for
more dedicated to exactly the path that you're going to be going on. Yeah.
Exactly. And to be honest, I can touch on that a little bit for anyone that is doing a similar program. I think it's a sacrifice. It first of all, financially, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But mentally, it's kind of a sacrifice. You don't get a little bit of a break, and you don't get to spread out your kind of workload there. And in my personal opinion, you got to be careful you don't burn out. And that was something I can touch on later. But burnout is a real thing for students. And if you don't get that gap year, or if you don't get that, maybe lighter semester during undergrad, you're jumping right into optometry school. And I tell you what, it does not get easier semester by semester. It gets harder and harder. So,
well, it's interesting too. And again, we'll obviously touch on that as well. But, I think what would be, even kind of what I'm curious about, right? And, some of the listeners might be curious as well is, what that biggest transition from going, from something like undergrad on to optometry school is, right? I mean, obviously there's a big difference in terms of the preparation and things like that that go into it. But it's interesting too, because, as you were mentioning, it's going into your first year of undergrad, it's not usually common to know exactly what route you want to go and what path you want to take. And so that you had this opportunity to go into a program like that is, I mean, it's amazing, right? Because you were able to just really, like you said, kind of streamline that process to go directly into optometry school, which probably made choosing optometry school very easy for you as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was going to say, that's definitely the reason why I picked, a huge reason why I picked MCO, of course, is that it's close by. Obviously, tuition rates, if we're going to talk financially, are good for me, but also they offered me that opportunity to begin my career a little bit earlier. And by the time I'd graduate, be a little bit younger, maybe 1 year. Maybe I could use that year and think of it. And I don't know if this is like girl math, but I can use it towards maybe residency. I was like, you know what? I took a year from undergrad of using it, putting it into residency, maybe something like that. So that was definitely, obviously, a lot of my factors choosing my school. But you asked about the transition year, and I really think that, if you talk to people in general, probably across the whole country, they'll probably tell you one thing. I'd say majority of people will tell you one thing that might surprise you, and that's that first year is the hardest. I think, what? How is first year the hardest? You don't have boards, you don't have a clinic, you don't have anything.
Yeah.
First year is, and I think in a way it's true, in one way, and that's because you're figuring things out, right?
Yeah.
That's first year is the biggest year where you're almost like, maybe not the time you're thinking this same mindset, but you're making mistakes.
Yep.
And you're fine tuning and adjusting them as you go through the program, right? And I don't mean just academically, but obviously that is a factor as well, right? So when you maybe take these exams and you don't know how to study, that's the hardest part. How do I study? I went to undergrad, and a lot of people can relate. Maybe it was easier, or maybe you had better resources, or you moved to a different area. How do I adjust and make sure that I know how to study for these, in my opinion, not necessarily extremely difficult standalone classes, but together with all this material at once? How do I get it so I actually learn what I need to know for each exam and also for clinic? So it's really difficult.
It'll be interesting to kind of, and now that you've mentioned that too, right, about first year being the hardest year, it'll be very, I'm curious now when talking to some other students right across the country, if that's really, if they feel like that's the same case, right? Because, again, I don't, it seems, and obviously correct me if I'm wrong here, but, when I think of that, right, it's very similar to your first year going into undergrad, right? It's such a transition into really understanding, right? At least that's how I felt at the time, was once I really felt like I understood the type of studying, right? The type of work that went into undergrad and things like that. That was that big step of, going from your high school days, obviously, into undergrad. And I would totally imagine, like what you're saying, where there's obviously a big adjustment between undergrad and then going into optometry school, right? And even little things like learning what to study and how to kind of best, prepare is, definitely a challenge, I can imagine.
And and the thing is, not even studying, right? So studying is probably the biggest thing that comes to mind, but how do I spend my time, outside of school? That's a great point. How do I ensure that I don't mentally burn out, right? So I want to still do the things that I have hobbies as well, believe it or not. But your time becomes more and more constricted, right? So you're like, I want to do blah, 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 or, like for me, we talked about this, me and Jordan get along with bond over this, but I'm a huge fan of sports, soccer, football, right? And obviously I like watching it, but I also that's actually my favorite way of doing cardio. So I hate running, right? So a way I used to do this all the time is I would just go outside and just kick around, and that'd be my cardio, right? But the more and more tighter your schedule gets, you have to really prioritize that and go, I need to put that on I didn't do that, at like 5 o'clock on Friday after a clinic or something like that. So I think really time management is a huge, huge learning curve that you will get better and better at. But probably the biggest thing that I struggled with personally my first year, it's like, what do I do with all this time, right? And then slowly you're like, I don't have time.
Yeah, well, and I think it's also, as I've learned as well, right, as the years go on, right, as you go from first year to second year to third year, right, you also get less and less time to yourself as well, right? So, I think it's also interesting to hear. I mean, granted, I know you said that, obviously managing time was something that became a big priority in terms of really being able to balance, right? But what have kind of been some of those ways that you've been able to balance, obviously having a full job almost, right, of being an optometry student, right, and still having, those hobbies like you mentioned, things that you like to do, and kind of being able to, balance those out.
I do think I think everyone kind of probably does it different ways. I really don't think there's a one size fits all method or anything like that. But I think really just having some sort of way of organizing your life. I would say I'm not the most organized person. I look at some of my classmates and I'm like, they have every minute written to a T. And personally, I kind of like I don't know, I kind of thrive in spontaneousness, if that makes sense. So like,
no, I get it.
It makes it more fun if I, oh, you know what, let's go do this, right? So for me personally, it's finding some way to organize yourself. So I personally love Google Calendar, so that's what I use. But I would just make it so there's something, right, that you do in your day that you actually enjoy doing, and it's not studying, right? It becomes really hard. I'm not gonna lie. There's a few days where you're like, I don't have time to do anything but study, right?
Yeah.
But maybe you can watch, like a 30-minute, YouTube video, or like you spend 30 minutes watching like something like YouTube or something like that, or sports. That way, at least you're doing something mentally for yourself. So I kind of think of it. I don't think of it as in, schedule my day, right? But I think of it as, I'm going to do one or two things today that is going to make me happy and not think about school. And then that way you kind of, keep your real life in check as well.
Yeah, totally. And like you're saying, a little bit of balance in your mental state, right? Not just, overpowering yourself and just flushing yourself with studying and things like that. And obviously just being able, from what it sounds like, right, just having a little bit of that, all right, I get some time to kind of just relax my mind a little bit and focus on those things that I enjoy focusing on or enjoy doing outside of the school.
Yeah, exactly. I would also recommend just working out as much as you can. I think it's something I would have definitely gone back and done more of. I started doing it and then I slowly stopped, and I was like, oh my God, just the mental benefit is insane. It is absolutely remarkable. You just feel so much better if you just go for like a run or something. So,
So, I mean, now that we obviously, again, appreciate the background, awesome to kind of hear some of those things. And again, now we can kind of transition more. And I know you obviously have a lot of amazing things to talk about as well, but obviously, MCO was it made it a very easy choice. You had the program. They obviously helped set up that program and really kind of streamline it for you. What have been some of the best parts about MCO? What are the things that you really appreciate the most about the school? And what are the things that they're kind of doing to really promote, your personal growth and development within this career?
Yeah. And so I'm actually a student ambassador for MCO, so Michigan College of Optometry. That means I help with the admissions process. So whenever, I think about like 5 or 6, times throughout the semester, I'll come with a student and that's admitting. It's a brand new student that's
we ran into each other actually during one of those.
Did we do that? We did.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's so funny. I wasn't gonna bring this up, but now that you mentioned it, I was like, one thing I love to do is first of all, we give tours and interviews and of the school, and we kind of obviously help the student get acclimated. But one thing I love doing is kind of sharing the school with sharing the school with them through other people, right? So like I think we met one student, and I was like, hey, Jordan, tell us a bit about what you do. Let the student understand, what does Keeler do? How do you guys contribute to the optical showcase? It makes it way more exciting and interesting, right? And that's something I like to do. But I was going to mention that because I'm a student ambassador, I actually get asked that question a lot, right? And I say that to almost every single student that I see, applicant that I see. And really the biggest things about MCO, and I really, really will attest to these being completely true, and I think are amazing aspects of the school, is the camaraderie that you build within a small class size, right? And what I mean by that is not just the students within one, year, like my year, but also within the years, and then also with the professors. And I think it's amazing, right? Because these professors essentially treat you like future colleagues, right? You don't feel like a number here, right? Every single one of them in my opinion, you can go to their offices or not. I'm actually in the building right now, but you can go to their offices, their rooms at any time, and ask them like, hey, maybe I need help with reviewing this exam. I want to work on work on something academic, right? But you could also ask them like, hey, I'm thinking about doing residency. Do you have any advice? I know you did a residency. I know you're an expert in this.
Mm-hmm.
How can I start a private practice? I know you have a private practice. So I think it's really amazing that you have that connection at all times. They all know our names. By the end of first year, you pretty much know everything about everybody. It's kind of scary. You know too much. I was gonna say, I was like, by the second semester, midway of my year, I think I knew like exactly what everyone did to study.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh yeah, this person's probably, they just went to the gym and they're probably gonna study at the school in this specific room.
That's awesome.
So personally, it's just that you get such a tight knit community with the people. Another thing is we're in a small town, if you remember. So we're in Big Rapids. There's not a huge area. But what's nice about it is this is a graduate program that offers a lot of, you got to spend a lot of time studying. So I actually think some people might find that as a disadvantage, but that could be a really good advantage if you want to focus and lock in. So
that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. That's one thing I tell students. I'm like, hey, if you're really dedicated about being an optometrist, I promise you, you will study because you have nothing else to do.
That's awesome. I love that.
No, there's some stuff to do, of course, but
of course,
it's just not as much of a bustling environment. So, which I don't, you got glass half full. It's always.
I see exactly where you're coming from on that too. But and I think we've talked about that too as well. Just even from inside the classroom's perspective, right? Not having a huge class where you kind of have, like you said, a much closer relationship with the professors, and it's probably reciprocated as well, right? I mean, they probably feel a lot closer to you as the students as well when they're seeing you on a regular basis, and instead of it being 80 to 100 students, right, it's 30 to 40 students, and they're able to kind of track that. And it's interesting because we've noticed that as well. I mean, even just walking around, MCO and we try and do our best, obviously, to make sure that not only the students know who we are, but the faculty as well. And it really is, it's an open door policy, right? Like that's what I've really started to realize at MCO is, they don't close, the professors don't close their doors, right? They want people to come in there, and obviously they are, promoting the same thing to the students as well, as to, come in there at any time. And, if you need anything from them, that's what they're there for, which is, again, it's awesome to hear that, again, they're obviously dedicating to the personal growth. And it's really interesting to hear you say that too, is it's an interesting way to think about it, right? They're treating you almost as future colleagues, right? Rather than being their students. And that's something that is
100%. Yeah. First year you look up and you're like, oh, Dr. So-and-so, and they're my, my idol or my professor, then they're always going to be. And then when you're here in third year in clinic and you're attending, or maybe you are asking them about clinical advice outside of clinic, all of a sudden you're talking the same lingo. You look back and you're like, man, I've grown so far, and it's the same professor that's seeing me. So it's pretty cool. And I was going to mention too, one thing you said about everyone knowing each other. I'd say everyone probably knows you, honestly. So
that's good. That's a good
cool?
thing.
Isn't it? Yeah, I was like, everyone's like, I'm going to go on this podcast with Jordan. Oh yeah, I know Jordan. Yeah. So it's super.
Well, that's awesome. I love to hear that. I mean, again, obviously, and that was one of the things that I was going to kind of talk about with you as well, is, it's also so much fun for us when we get to go to these optometry shows, right? Like when we have the academic challenge, when we have the student bowls, right? Like that is and it's also one of those areas where I think it's also very fun from an outside perspective too, to watch all of you students as well, and all of the faculty members and everybody kind of just be able to enjoy, being away from kind of the thick of things of being, exams or lectures, things like that, and really kind of getting to enjoy the time. But that was also kind of one of the areas that I think would be curious to talk about as well, is, obviously I know that, it's a lot different than what an optometry show is for us, where we just kind of stand at our booths and, discuss with people, right? So what is again, I know that there's also a certain amount of shows, right, that you need to kind of go to within 4 years. I know there's kind of courses that you have to go to. So kind of take me through, I know we saw each other last, where was that at the time? That was in, that was before, I think it was New Orleans maybe at the time, but
no, it was you mean Academy, or do you mean?
Yeah, that might be.
It was
Indianapolis, that's right.
Yeah.
So kind of take us through what that type of show is for you, right? Or what goes on behind the scenes for a student, right? Because again, obviously you get to go around, speak with all the different booths, all the different vendors, manufacturers, things like that. Obviously get to learn about a lot of different stuff, but I know there's requirements and things like that on the other end too, right? So Take us through it.
Do you mean like the ones? So I can talk about. Do you mean the ones at our school, and then also?
Yeah.
It's like pretty much every time I see you, right? I can tell you
exactly.
every time I see George. Yeah. So the ones I think it's pretty cool because I actually went to Chicago. I forget the CCO. I think it's Downers Grove. I think
Downers Grove. Yeah, Midwestern.
I went to Downers Grove for the Midwestern. They have a Midwestern conference, and that was the first year there a couple of years ago. And I saw you there as well. And it's kind of cool to compare how different schools do it, and it's at least between us and Midwestern there, it was pretty similar, except just a bit of obviously a different environment. But the way that we do at MCO when we have the optical showcase and first years and second years are coming in for the first time, we make it a kind of like I'd say like a obviously like a pretty cool event, but we make it more like a raffle based event. So we'll have obviously all the vendors coming in, Jordan included, and we have these prizes, right? We have all these prizes on the table, and we'll have students kind of donate to it's a student government run event. And so we'll have students kind of participate. We'll make it a fun event where, there's like pretty cool, like paintings that our professors would draw, some cool stickers, some Etsy material from makers of that. And then we'll have some as far as like lenses, like pretty expensive lenses.
Yeah.
So first, second, and third years all come down and spend pretty much an hour or two hanging out and obviously exploring and experiencing what they're going to buy. So it's kind of an I would say for a first year perspective, I'd say it's probably the most exciting event your first month, right? Because you're sitting here going, I got admitted into optometry school, but now I actually feel like, hey, I'm starting to be, a doctor. This is my journey.
Yeah.
You get to put the the headset VIO on. You get to experience the handles, and you're like, wait. You don't know what you're doing at all, by the way. You're just like touching a bunch of buttons, listening to what they tell you, and then but you look at your future, kind of like your future kind of sparkles there for a second, and so it's pretty cool for us. We make it more of a fun event, but I'm sure other schools obviously do it different if they're bigger, especially. But as far as like the more kind of nationwide conferences, like Academy or I think Optometry's meeting, I think you guys are there as well, right?
Yep.
For those are more the exhibit halls, and I would say that's probably the coolest part of those events, right? Because you go to all the CEs, of course, you learn there, but once you go and see every single, industry partner, whether it's, Keeler or whether it's something more like eye care related or, like dry eye related, something like that.
Yeah.
It's almost overwhelmingly like you don't know where to go, especially
I can imagine.
When you're like a younger. Yeah, you're like, so you got to check out everything at least once, but you don't know exactly. I'm not going to lie. If there's anything free, I typically will tend to walk there.
For sure. So. Yeah, absolutely. As you should. I say it all the time. For some reason, every time I leave a trade show, I get a new pair of like optometry related socks or something like that, dress socks. It's always so funny. I come out with something new. I'm like, well, I have to take one of those. I know I'm a manufacturer, but you have to.
I was going to say, I never thought about it from your perspective. So you get a chance to walk around too.
For sure. For sure.
That's cool.
Yeah. Well, I think even from our side of things, right? I mean, obviously, we have different lines of products and we're involved on the ophthalmology side as well. But, it's so interesting for me to be able to walk through that entire exhibit halls as well. I mean, there's so many companies and so many different, people do so many different things, right? And being able to kind of, even if it's just walking by to kind of get a brief understanding of what those companies do. Again, it's interesting to learn, right? It's just you're learning more about other people, learning more about the industry. And I think that's always something that's cool to be able to take a little bit of time during those shows to go walk around and experience it.
I agree with that. I think honestly that you're never going to learn everything, right? Your brain is just too small for that one moment in time. So
totally.
I think simply just getting a chance to just experience it, right? These are all experts in their specific industry, right? Just kind of listen and see if, what you take out of it, right? Obviously, there's like some things you will be more able to understand when you're a first year, or that you're not really able to understand when you're a first year. So I think I've actually gone to a optometry meeting twice and Academy once. And every single time I go, I'm like, wow, I'm learning more and more, and it's building up. So I think it's pretty cool in that aspect. And then also, I just think it's fun. It's just simply fun. There's like different booths and different like games. So I think, and plus, I'm sure you guys let us try kind of the equipment, right? When you're there, that's always awesome. That's always awesome. New technology is like the most, in my opinion, just ridiculously cool because like every year it's something new is coming out in somewhere. So yeah, I'd say it's probably. But you're saying, I think the requirements you're mentioning.
Well, you were talking about CEs, right? So like,
Yeah,
is there
yeah.
a number of CEs that you need to go to during those shows? Like, how does that look?
Yeah, it depends on what you're trying to achieve, right? So I
Okay.
think for OM, for optometrist meeting,
Mm-hmm.
typically the CEs would go towards a travel grant, right? So
Yep.
when I did that my first year, they gave it out for free. So we kind of got to go there, but we had to go to these certain CEs, right? I think it was like it
Mm-hmm.
was quite a bit. It was like 8 to 10, I think. So,
Wow.
and by the way, I don't know if you were there, if you remember that moment there, but a lot of people went to that one because of the travel grant. So it was
I do.
packed. It was
Yeah.
absolutely packed. It was every
Mm-hmm.
single room was filled, which for better or for worse, I guess people were really excited to go and get the travel
Yeah, of
grant,
course.
or maybe the
Yeah.
CE was really exciting. I don't know, but but for academy, that one I would say I did it personally for the fellowship. So you get a student
Yep.
fellowship if you get to participate and go to all these CEs, go to the exhibit halls, go watch research posters, and all pretty much everything there is that they have to offer. Honestly, a student fellowship, highly recommend it. Like it's a perfect kind of like itinerary to go and kind of experience the whole event in
Mm-hmm.
general.
Yep.
So when I was there with a couple buddies, and we pretty much had our day mapped out based on
Nice.
that.
Yeah.
So we were like, all right, from 8 to 9, we're gonna go to this CE. This is a pretty cool one. Want to learn about this? It's part of our credits. And then we're gonna go from 9 to 10, talk to Jordan for a little bit, and then go
Mm-hmm.
from 10 to 11, and
Yeah.
go to experience the exhibit hall, obviously, and then
Yep.
support our residents, everything like that. It's honestly, if you haven't had a shot to go, if whoever's listening, if you haven't had a shot to go, I'd highly recommend it. I honestly
Yep.
enjoyed both OM and Academy, but
Yeah, we always have such a good time at those too.
yes,
And again, I mean, obviously, academic challenge, student ball, those to top off those shows are always a great time.
yes, yeah, yeah,
But it's interesting, I guess, and I've never really thought about it until we were kind of just discussing this as well. Like when you're at some of these, like, or at like a student bowl or an academic challenge, or at some of these, larger shows like an OM or an academy, do you get to like interact at all with some students from other schools? Like, do you guys ever kind of connect, or
yeah,
is it really just more so, obviously you've got, the
yeah,
MCO students and then,
yeah.
I don't know, IU students or whoever it may be, right? Like, is
It's a
there
bit
any
of
sort of interaction, or is it kind of, yeah,
It's a great question. It's a bit. I feel like it's a bit of both, and it really
yep,
depends on kind of honestly, it's your approach to that meeting.
yeah,
Although a lot of people obviously want to stay with their group, and which I'm completely fine with. I think it's
totally,
you
yeah,
want to go together, you might as well.
yeah,
Um, so I've experienced both of those. It's kind of funny that you mentioned that.
mm-hmm,
My first year, I think first and maybe that second time I went to OM, I largely did it with MCO folks. Right, stayed with my group and we hung out
mm-hmm.
together, and we kind of were just like little measly first years trying to
Yeah, well, it's new, right? You're
figure
just
out.
getting
Yeah,
used
we're
to the
trying to figure out
experience.
where
Yeah,
do I even go, and yeah,
yeah,
but it was super exciting.
yeah,
But this last academy, actually, only a few people went just because the schedule was a little bit tough
yeah,
for our school. So I think probably about 10 or so people from my school went, and that really gave me a chance to meet other schools, and I loved it. I absolutely
I
loved it
bet.
because
Yeah.
I came into it with that approach. I was like, you know what, I want to meet other people, see
Hmm.
how compare programs, obviously, but like I just want to interact, and I'm a social butterfly sometimes when it comes to these because I think it's just so cool to see what somebody else in the
Yep.
same field as you is doing because it's completely different. I bet you somebody in Florida right now has completely different experience to what I just said so far, and I think it's pretty neat, honestly, that
Yeah.
our field is that wide, you know.
Yeah.
So honestly, when I got a chance to go to Academy, I made sure to meet as many people as possible, and I think it's amazing. I think I had a great time, so
Yeah.
highly recommend it.
And that's kind of where the question came from. Obviously, with the relationships that we've had, right? I obviously picked up
Yep.
on, how social a guy that you are as well, and
Yeah.
and I can totally see it from that perspective too, where it's like, those first year, second year, maybe, second year still, you're kind of getting used to going to those shows, really taking it all in and really understanding what you're doing, right? But as you're going on, right, and you're getting more and more experience, it's probably cool. You're probably potentially seeing some familiar faces from these other schools as well. And
Yeah.
it's actually funny. I say it, I've told this story before, but it was funny when I was first starting with Keeler. One of the things that was repeated to me was the only similarities, right, between these schools is that there's walls and that there's people inside of them, right? All the
Yeah.
schools are going to do things differently, right? You're going to have different
Yeah.
sizes
That's
in terms of
hilarious.
the schools, right? As you mentioned, right, we'll be at some of the schools orientation week, right, to do presentations on equipment, and some will do already in second semester, right? So it's interesting
Yeah.
how everybody does it differently. And again, I think that's also what's going to make this podcast also really interesting too, is again, just really hearing those different perspectives from people all over the country and the different schools and how they go about these same things, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think honestly, just talking for like 5 minutes, like, hey, how do you guys do this? How do you guys do that? And it's
Hmm.
completely different, or it's similar in a way, and you think, wow, like maybe we're not so different overall.
Yeah.
Um, I totally forgot you came in orientation week for us, and I
Yep.
just remembered that now. I was like, wow,
Hmm.
so we met a long time ago now.
Yeah, a
I
long
didn't
time. I
realize
mean,
that.
that's what it's, yeah, it's been
That's
3 years,
amazing.
but
Yeah, yeah,
essentially, yeah.
yeah. You brought Jimmy John's, questionable, but
We did. Well, it was a partnered move. So
okay.
I don't
No,
want
I
to take
actually
all
really
the
like
heat
Jimmy
for that
John's.
one.
I'm just giving you a hard time. It was
No,
bad.
you're good. Hey, I'm on the same page as you, so don't
Are
worry.
you okay? We have a Jersey Mike's in Big Rapids now, so I'm telling you guys, come in. Come
Yeah,
to
exactly.
MCO.
Now that you got that right, well, and that's now noted, right? That I think that might have been a slightly put in there for the first and second years now for the
Yeah,
next upcoming event, right? No Jimmy John's, but J Mike's is now there.
yeah.
So
It's in the admissions packet. You can just open the
that's awesome.
stuff.
So I know I'm not going to take too much more time, but I know that actually, and one of the things I think would be interesting to talk about too, is being a part of the student government. I know we've talked about that too, right? If I'm not wrong, right? You're the secretary, correct?
Not for the student government, for different organization, but I can talk about that as well.
Yeah, please do. Yeah,
I'm
yeah. Because
I'm,
I
I'm a
remember us
secretary
talking about it.
for yeah, I'm a secretary
Yeah,
for NOSA, which is another
yeah.
big National Optometric Student
Student
Association.
association. Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, we can, like I said, coming from MCO, all of our clubs kind of know each other pretty well. Like I
Yeah.
know pretty much what each one kind of does, so I can talk about whatever we want to talk about as far as how things are set up. So
Yeah, well, I think more so what I was curious about is kind of like some of the involvement that you're in the school outside
sure,
of just,
yeah,
being an everyday student, right? Like what are some,
yeah,
and again, I know that I don't know if you've had the opportunity to go on any mission trips or anything like that, or know any classmates that went on mission trips, but kind of those ways that there's, or even just involvement areas that MCO
yeah,
offers, right? Like things that students can go do while they're there outside
yeah.
of, the everyday.
I'm trying to think of. I think we have. I think almost every school kind of has around the same ideas for clubs. There's
Hmm.
maybe a couple obviously that are different based on
Yeah.
maybe the area or anything like that. But personally, I think student involvement is a great way of interacting and kind of putting yourself out there. I mean, one obviously it's a great career builder, right? You want to have that experience and that resume builder type of kind of
Hmm.
idea coming into it. But I also think it just allows you to give back to the school and to kind of participate in making these amazing events come to life, right? So
Yeah.
I'm part of NOSA, which is the National Optometric Student Association. And one thing that we actually have coming up let me see, it's like in almost 2 weeks, we have our
Hmm.
talent show. So we actually
Oh,
set up a
cool.
talent show. Yeah, we set up a talent show starting like 4 years ago before I got here. And then since I've gotten here, we've been doing it, and it's
Yeah.
kind of cool. I was one of the people to help like kind of like usher it, I guess. I
Yeah.
was like helping set up and then help people out with changing between acts, and now I'm actually one of the ones helping make the whole thing happen. So we just booked out the
Nice. That's
room.
awesome.
Yep, we're doing that. So there's lots of different ways that you can get involved. It's even something as cool as that, right? So like at MCO, we have each club's kind of doing something I would say pretty remarkable, and then
Hmm.
something that's fun, right?
Yeah.
So NOSA, we do some pretty cool things, kind of fundraising, giving back to the community in town. So we do a thing that is kind of like a food drive. We help out this food
Cool.
pantry nearby. So we'll have like a
Yeah.
competition, right? So we'll have a competition between the classes, and then we give back to a local food pantry during like winter. So that's pretty cool because
That's awesome. Yeah.
winter is pretty rough for lots of families with the
Totally.
weather, especially in Michigan. So
I was about to say,
Michigan's
especially
pretty
in,
bad.
yeah,
Michigan's pretty bad. Yeah.
northern
Um,
Michigan. Yeah.
and then we'll do a talent show, right? So it's pretty cool that we can kind of contrast that.
Yeah.
Um, but
Well, that the
I'm
fun
also,
turns into something meaningful like that too, right?
yes,
And
yeah, yeah,
you're making a difference while it's,
yeah,
you're having a good time with all your classmates inside the school, right? So, yeah, that's awesome.
yeah. I guess actually, that's a good way to like think about it. So I won't cover like every single club because we have too many to
Yeah,
cover.
of course. Yeah.
But I would say each one has like a pretty cool event tied to it. Like so, we'll have like a golf outing in the fall actually coming, or in the spring coming up soon. We have the optical showcase you were mentioning before.
Hmm.
We'll have lots of events, kind of networking stuff like that. But for me personally, other than NOSA, I'm actually a member of SWASH, which you mentioned, which
Yep.
mission trips, right? So SWASH or SWASH, some schools call it.
Hmm. Yeah.
I think it's
Depends on
yeah.
who you talk to. Yeah.
It's so weird.
Swash, yeah.
We call it SWASH, and then someone's
Yep.
like, "Well, why don't you call it SWASH?" I was like, "That's a great point. I don't."
I've heard both.
Um,
Yep.
So if you guys don't know, it means students volunteer. I think it's students volunteer optometric services to humanity.
Yep.
Essentially, I think it's it's a pretty amazing kind of organization And so for us here, we rack up hours, right, sorting glasses, and then we verify them, and then we participate in different kind of events. We have like some cool screening events for different people in the Detroit area, actually. And then when you compile all these hours, they actually allow you to go on these mission trips later on when you graduate. So I personally haven't done it, but I'm planning on doing one right after I graduate in my fourth year. But I'll tell you what, from talking to people and the professors that have done it, it is insane how much of an impact you can have on people. So we'll go to these like third world countries, and they'll have lines waiting for because they know that MCO is coming, right? And they know that they haven't had their glasses corrected. They have uncorrected refractive error. They have cataracts that haven't been touched on, and literally their eyes will glow at the fact that you give them a pair of glasses, right? Awesome. Or you maybe screen them and take a look at the back of their eyes and just say, hey, you have this condition. We know exactly where to refer you and get you some help, right? So just talking to the professors, they've been doing this for decades. Decades. And you just know that, when they're retired as a doctor, but they still do this, that means it means something to them. So
totally.
That's something I'm really pretty excited to do later on, but I haven't done it yet. I can't say I've done it yet. So,
well, but it's interesting, obviously we, in one of those things too. And again, when that time does come, right, reach out to us because we love supplying equipment for things like that as well. And,
oh my God, that'd be amazing.
And we get that feedback all the time from, all the different schools that go on those SVOSH or SVOSH trips as well. But, it's remarkable, right? Because you hear about, I think the last one that I heard was from Ohio State, and they were there for 3 days, and they saw like 1,200 or 1,500 patients within 3 days, right? It's incredible that not only, that you either right after school, right, or being a part of school that have that opportunity to go and really kind of it's just a different type of experience, right, too, right? It's like from what I've understood, right, it's just you are really helping these people out, right? And it's a remarkable program that all the schools do, and it's really cool. Are there typically are there locations that MCO typically goes to and provides or helps at? But
I think they're I have to double check and see exactly what they're thinking about for the future, but there is one that they tend to go to quite often because they've kind of established a really, really amazing kind of foothold there with, I think, the government even actually. It's a small island in the Caribbean called Dominica or Dominica, I believe. I can't remember how to pronounce it, but they're coming back already in May, this coming May, and they're going to hit a different part of the island, right? Because there's two separate parts of the island. And what's kind of cool there is, and again, I haven't gone there myself, but talking, it's been generations now of people that go there. They are so kind and welcoming, and they allow us, they're so hospitable, right? And they allow us to kind of experience their culture too. So they'll give us like, hey, there's this food from our homes that we really want you to try, or there's this really cool drink that we're known for. And so it's kind of cool because you're doing kind of a double whammy, right? You're helping these people out, and you get to experience their culture, right? So I think it's kind of a neat idea, and something I think I want to, a lot of things you do as a student, right? But you want to think about maybe what are you going to do after you graduate, and that's something I think I would be interested in doing when I'm actually a doctor, right? And I'll have the means to do it more often. So. Yeah.
Well, and you're making an impact every day as it is, right? Like you're impacting people's lives every day, being an optometrist as it is, right? But being able to go and do something like that in an area where they don't get to see an optometrist unless you guys are really down there is probably really rewarding in itself as well. I mean, again, obviously you got your time is coming soon, but it's just,
Not to be the MC for a second, but I was gonna say, that's actually a big part of why I wanted to do optometry, which I don't know if we covered yet, but one thing I've noticed is how much of a quick impact optometry can have, like truly, like instantaneous in certain departments, and that's something that I really enjoy, right? I love interacting with people as patients and being a beneficial, positive part of their life, and seeing it is amazing, right? So when you think about it, it's glasses are so simple, right? But in certain areas, they're not, they're not as common. So I just think personally, it's a good motivator.
Yeah, totally. Well, and again, I mean, sometimes when you are in an area like we're in, right, or in a country like we're in, you kind of just forget to appreciate those things that are second nature to us here, right? But that, a lot of other people around the world don't have the same access to, right? And that the optometry schools and MCO specifically, right, are sending students down there to not only get experience, right, but to take care of the people down there as well. Is just, again, it's really cool that that the program is set up in general. So,
Yeah.
again, we'll kind of start to move towards wrapping up. But what I've also been curious
Yeah.
about is now that you've begun working in clinic more often, right? Is there, I know we talked about it at the beginning, right? Optometry's got a lot of different areas, right?
Yeah.
Is there kind of an interest area that you've kind of been leaning towards that
Yeah.
you're, kind of looking at kind of specializing in, or maybe, spending more time on?
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to this, but when you first step on here, your first day of optometry school, you don't really know, kind of like undergrad, right? You don't really know, like, hey, I want to do optometry. I figured that out.
Yeah.
But now what part of optometry do I want to do?
It comes all back. You're like, oh, again.
It's crazy. You're like, and then you're like, residency or no residency? That's like, that's like the biggest questions, like to be or not to be. Residency or no residency? It's almost like a 50-50 shot. You ask somebody and they're like, do it. And then you ask somebody else, like, I didn't do it. I don't recommend it. And I was like, man, there's so many choices to make. But personally, I think it's been easier to find out what I don't want to do. I think that's kind of
that's interesting.
And that's just as interesting. Yeah, and that's just I think just as important to know. I think from the get-go, and I actually I worked at, between my first and second years, I worked at a pediatrics clinic.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, I really enjoyed it, and I think I got a lot of experience on how to speak with kids and their parents. But I came out of it being like, man, that was draining. Like, that was a lot. Like, it felt like I had to definitely put on, like, I lost a lot of energy.
Bit of a different, persona, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, I love seeing kids, but maybe not every single
patience levels, have to be increased, right? Yeah.
Like, maybe every seventh patient can be a kid. That's fine with me. So I knew right away. I was like, okay, pediatrics, maybe not for me. I enjoyed it, but not as a specialty.
Yeah.
And on the contrary, contact lenses, something I don't wear contacts at all. And when I first did it, I was like, hey, I have no experience. I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I can do this. I'm behind everyone else, that felt like at the time. And then once I kind of delved into it, right, that's probably one of the most interesting and kind of advancing technologies in optometry, right? You have specialty lenses, you have sclerals, right? You have ortho K, you have all these new kind of aspects of contact lenses. And when I first got into clinic, right, this was past with contact lenses specifically about the fall, right, about August. This was kind of fun. So I really think contacts is probably something I'm interested in. And then I've always been a big kind of, I don't want to say fan of disease, but I've found myself. I was like, I don't think I could, but I've definitely.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah,
I've been more interested in that department, but that's because I worked at, and just to give myself some background of me, I worked at an ODMD, which is obviously a dual optometrist and medical ophthalmologist. Practice before, and I really, really enjoyed it, right? Because you get to see all these kind of fascinating areas of health that you're actually can see treatments towards. But that was another kind of motivator towards me doing optometry, of course.
Yeah.
So that's always been there, and then contact lenses kind of been a new interest of mine. But other than that, everything's up for grabs. I can't rule anything out. I don't know. I can't really, it's really tough. I think you have to experience it to really know.
Yeah, totally. Well, and it's interesting, like you said, right? You figured out first, right, what areas you didn't enjoy as much as the ones that you did, right? And again, obviously it comes with time and, being in the clinic and spending more time with patients and things like that.
I'm hoping that, one day just like, what do you call it? When kind of like something happens and you wake up and you're like, oh, I want to do this.
You have that, it's like the light bulb moment, right?
Light bulb,
a little bit of the light bulb moment,
Yeah, it's like a light bulb moment, and I think, you know what, I'm just gonna go all in on something, but it's really tough because you want to kind of keep all doors open at the same time. You want to specialize, so maybe I do primary care. Go down the middle. It's really tough to know.
Well, again, Saif, I really do appreciate you jumping on, man. It's always a pleasure being able to catch up with you.
If anyone listening, would like to ask me more questions or maybe get to know a bit more of my perspective as a third-year optometry student at Michigan College of Optometry, you can feel free to give my contact out.
I appreciate that offer. That'd be awesome that we can do that.
Yeah, I'm a student ambassador for my school, of course, but I'd love to be an ambassador for optometry in general. So any way I can help, I'd absolutely love to. So, yeah.
Saif, again, thank you so much, man. Always a pleasure to see you as well.
Thank you guys so much. It was an honor to be on here.